2 days ago, I found this hat on the side of the road, and 2 years ago, I built this box for a lovely young old lady that I met at a craft show. I filmed the entire process and was very excited to share it with the world until my computer broke and all of the footage was lost. So today, we will be remaking this project, using cherry instead of mahogany. Onward. I have little to no memory of the exact dimensions of the original box, so I'm going to rip this board down to 7 inches, and I'll use the main chunk for the body of the box, and I'll use the cutoff chunk for the drawers. Onward. To the joiner. All right, these are both flat and square, and we're going to focus on the body of the box for now, which means we can get rid of this, and it's time to rip this thing down on the bandsaw. All right, so the truth is out. I'm actually making 2 boxes, and for the overall dimensions of the boxes, I just measured my total length of board. I have 4 of these boards, and decided on roughly 12 inches by 8 inches. So what I'm going to do is I have a stop block set up to 12 inches here on the miter saw, and I'm going to cut 4 pieces, 2 for each box, and that'll be the sides of the boxes, and then I'll move the stop block to 8 inches, and I'll cut like 8 of those for the top and the bottom, and then 2 middle divider pieces. So I probably am already chopping because there's video footage overlaying this, I hope. So enjoy. Well, I made a little bit of a silly mistake. When I was milling these pieces, I ran one face over the joiner and then one edge over the joiner to get those square to each other. And then while I was at it, before I ran these things through the bandsaw, I went ahead and just cleaned up the other edge on the joiner just so that I could get a good pencil mark on it. What I should have done instead is done one face and one edge on the joiner, and then taken these boards to the table saw, reference that edge against the table saw, and cut off the other edge to make sure that these edges are parallel. Now, because I didn't do that and just cleaned up both edges on the joiner, both edges are flat and cleaned up, but they're not necessarily parallel to each other. So what I've done is I have taken the table saw and moved it just a hair in from the usual thickness of these boards, and I'm just going to run all the boards through the table saw now to get them square. Now, one other thing that's important here is I can't just pick a side and throw it against the table saw and run it through. That'll make the faces parallel, but it might make the square cut that we just made no longer square. So I need to make sure that the same edge that I just referenced on the miter saw goes against the table saw here. All right, everything has been squared up. I've actually switched out the blade in my table saw for a dado blade that is just barely sticking up above the table saw, and it is time to cut grooves in all of the side pieces. So we're going to do that. I already sanded all of the pieces up to like 180 grit. That way I can just assemble it as soon as I cut these grooves. you'll notice that I referenced one side, cut the groove, flipped the piece around, referenced the other side, and cut the groove. That is so that at the very least, both the top and bottom drawer are the same length. And if my measurements and calculations were correct, then the middle drawer gap will be the same as well. And it turns out I was off by about a 32nd of an inch, so I'm pretty pleased with that. Now let's glue these things up. I am extremely angry. Here are my two boxes, and here is a box of bird's eye maple that I originally bought on eBay like 2 years ago when I built the original box. Now watch this one. The maple is just a little bit shorter than the height of the boxes. Now what I originally planned on doing, and what I did last time I built these, was book match these boards and cut runners to face the entire box and the drawer faces out of one piece. So everything is book matched and the grain flows through the whole box. Now, unfortunately, this is too short, and especially after I cut it with a saw 7 times, it's just not gonna work. So what I've decided to do instead is make a little cherry and maple sandwich and glue that on the frame of the entire boxes, and then I'll have enough to book match and make all of the faces for the drawers. So let's do it. I have selected my 2 pieces of bird's eye maple, and I've already jointed them and ripped them down to just over 4 inches wide. So now it's time to cut them down the center like this, open it like a book, glue it back together, and then cut it up into drawer fronts. Onward. Cream cheese under the library bears witness to the fruits of Orion. So you saw me make these little pieces of banding, but now what I've done is I've cut them down to size. I've used my disc sander to sand a 45-degree corner on all of the ends, and then I used my scroll saw to cut these little notches. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put glue all over the face frame and tape these face frame pieces down onto the box. Oh. So both of the boxes now have the banding on the front. And now for the back, what I'm going to do is I have these two pieces of book matched cherry that are just going to go on the back of the boxes like that. And they're a little bit oversized right now, which is fine. I'm just going to glue them on like this, and then I'll trim them down once they're secured. While I was using the router table to flush trim this back panel so that it's even with the rest of the box, I experienced some major tear out. And so now the back corner of my box is gone. Now, to fix it, I'm going to use another router and a roundover bit and just make the whole back and maybe even the sides of the box rounded. So that's just to cover up the fact that this wood is gone, but I think it'll be nice. And if fixing the mistake with this router doesn't work, I reckon I have one more try. So the roundover got rid of most of the tear out. You can still see there's a little bit there, but I can just make the roundover just slightly bigger by sanding it, and that'll erase what you see right there. Oh yeah. As promised, I routed just to the very edge, and then I'll sand that to match the rest of the roundover. And I like this. I'm glad that I did that. And I think the other one is going to stay sharp, but I definitely like this kind of rounded look. So, onward. The box frames are done, so now it's time to work on the drawers. And I have all of these very thin strips of cherry that are already the correct width. And what I've done is I've set up the stop block to cut all of the side pieces for my drawers, and then I'll adjust the stop block to the correct length for the fronts and the backs and cut 12 more of those. Onward. I need to cut the groove on the bottoms of all of these pieces to hold the bottom piece into the drawers. And I tried to set up my dado stack, but it turns out that the groove that I need is even smaller than the smallest setup on my dado stack, which means I'll just be running all of these through the saw like this, I'll move the fence over just a little bit and run it again until it fits perfectly in the plywood I have for the bottoms. So let us begin. All right, we're just gonna move it over slightly and run everything through again. Okay, I have my long pieces here for the fronts and the backs. I have my short pieces here for the sides. I have these bottom plywood pieces that I just cut out a minute ago. And I have a cup full of glue and a paintbrush. It is time to assemble 5 more of these. I did a test one off camera just to make sure I knew what I was doing. So these look lovely, but let's put these on the front of them. But first I need to run these through the drum sander to get them flattened one more time and then chop them up into 3 pieces and glue them to the fronts. As it turns out, I am completely rubbish at filming this whole process, and I forgot to videotape me taking the clamps off, and I might have forgotten to videotape me testing to see if these fit nicely. So, for the first time ever, let's see if these drawers fit into the box. No, wait, that's the bottom. 1 for 1. 2 for 2. Oh wow! Now I'm reacting to seeing that this works for the first time. Hello, it's time to make the drawer pools, and for that I'm using this very small scrap of cherry. It's already planed down to probably maybe 3/8 of an inch or a 1/2 inch, and I'm going to rip it down on the table saw. And then I'll cut it into little pieces and drill holes in all of those pieces and connect the drawer pull to the drawer itself with a dowel. Whoa. So I actually meant to drill these holes before I cut all these into little pieces, but I didn't. So because they're not through holes, I'm gonna move the table over like this. That way there's a little bit more support. And then we're just gonna hope that the fingers stay safe. Oh, I think the fingers are gonna stay safe. Wonderfully sharp bit. All right, here we go. The glue paintbrush is making another appearance to glue these very small pieces of dowel into these holes. And then once those are glued in, then I will glue these on top of that. And the dowels will provide like structural support or make it stronger, but it's a little bit ridiculous because the wood glue would already be plenty strong just to stick these to the face of the box. It would be extremely difficult to rip these off, even if the dowel was not there. What the dowel will do is it will make for very easy alignment. So now all I need to be worried about is the rotation, because I know this is centered and this is centered. So all I need to worry about is making sure it doesn't look like that. That's the reason I'm doing the dowel, but it will also make it a lot stronger than it ever needs to be. It's way over the mountain tops. So here we go. Yep, and you will see a little bit of squeeze out there, which means we have quite enough glue. I initially was a little bit worried about how big and bulky these handles are, but now I think I really like it. And hopefully it won't matter whether or not I like it. Hopefully someone else likes it and will buy these. All right. All right. Oh, at last, the time has come to apply a finish. And for the finish, I am using shellac, because it is unbelievably forgiving, and I think it will make this cherry look very nice. I have a gigantic rag, largest rag of all time and dirtiest, to just wipe up any dust before I apply the finish, but let's get to it. All right, I am angry. About a week ago today, I came into the shop to finish putting the finish on these boxes. I have finish on one of them, and I was going to put it on the other. And as I was unlocking the door to my shop, I dropped the phone on which I film my videos, and it shattered to the point where the phone was no longer usable. And all the footage for the video you're now watching was on it. And if you'll remember from the beginning of the video, This same project experienced a technological breakage. The device that the whole video was on broke. I could no longer access it, and I gave up. I was like, this is too much. I can't handle this. So I was very frustrated for that to happen again on the same project. However, I have fixed the phone. I ordered a new phone screen and put on the new phone screen, and the thing actually works, which is delightful. At this point, it's not about getting monetized on YouTube. It's not about showing people that I build furniture in hopes that they want me to build them something. It is about not letting the technological machine come after me and actually uploading this thing to YouTube. So, I have a brush. I have finish. Let's finish putting on the finish. I don't know if I've explained this yet, but the reason I'm using shellac is firstly because it's really easy to apply and it's very difficult to mess up. You just apply a coat, wait for it to cure, sand it down a little bit, apply another coat, sand that back a little bit, and then apply a third coat and buff it out just a little bit, and it is a spectacular finish. And secondly, because it lasts a very long time and it looks very nice. Some finishes kind of wear out with time. This does not. This still looks beautiful years and years later, and it doesn't look like it's a gigantic plastic coating. The wood looks finished, as you can see with the color change when I apply this, but it still looks like wood, and it still feels like a natural thing, not some plastic coated nonsense. Oh my! It has been almost 30 minutes of pain and glory, but these boxes are done. They will be for sale on my website, and if you're curious, the pricing will be $200, or you can buy both of them for $300. Wow. For $300 total, so you get $100 off if you get both. We've got the rounded one and the square one. I am immensely relieved to be done with this project. It has dragged on forever, and the editing has dragged on beyond believable bounds. And up next, hopefully sooner than later, I will be building pizza peels. So, until next time, go find some crocodiles.